Hello, this is Jules for the most part. This video uses some terms like Tier 1, Tier 2, magic, manifested reality, subtle, and causal that I've defined in previous videos, so I've included a link to the Start Here playlist in the description box in case you would find definitions for those terms to be helpful. In Tier 1, religious and/or magical groups, mystery schools, etc., outer court refers to the knowledge and practices pre-initiation. These tend to comprise the safer and more mundane training meant to test and prepare aspirants. For example, physical training and purification, emotional training and clearing, mental training and learning, possibly some very light magical practices, but always firmly centered in manifested reality. Inner court refers to the knowledge and practices post-initiation. Ideally, this is where you get to learn how to progress to true late subtle stage, causal stage, and potentially even further, do the cool magic stuff, and explore things beyond manifested reality, like causal realms and phenomena, and even the void itself. However, there's always a possibility that the inner court knowledge and practices, over time and generations, become disconnected from the real late subtle and causal phenomena, and instead degenerate into merely additional concepts, theories, and ineffectual or simply psychological ritualistic practices. In Tier 1, the distinctions between outer and inner courts are managed and enforced by human gatekeeping. The inner court knowledge and practices are intentionally kept secret from the outer court non-initiates. So the terms outer court and inner court refer to two different dichotomies that get conflated in Tier 1. Outer court refers both to the more mundane practices and knowledge and to the outer social circle, the lower level of the hierarchy. And inner court refers both to the more esoteric practices and knowledge and to the inner social circle, the higher level of the hierarchy. In Tier 2, however, particularly in Turquoise stage and beyond, it becomes more apparent that humans don't need to manage these distinctions, and in fact, that humans are not very well suited to managing them. As part of how reality works, there are natural barriers. In most cases, people who aren't ready for more esoteric practices and knowledge can't access them even if they try. If someone does manage to push their way through these barriers, there's a high chance that they'll hurt themselves in some manner that will make it subsequently impossible for them to do that again. So when I use the terms outer court magic and inner court magic, I only mean the natural distinctions. Outer court magic is simply magic that is based in manifested reality. In other words, when you're doing outer court magic, you're always in a location in physical reality. For example, reading auras, energy work, for example, energy healing or the green egg technique that I recently made a video about, making amulets and talismans, talking to animals, trees, rocks, etc., interacting with ghosts and land spirits, astral projection that stays within the confines of physical reality. In other words, yes, you leave your physical body, but you're still wandering around in physical reality, visiting other places on our planet or visiting other places in our physical universe. Any ritual work where you stay in physical reality, cleansing spaces, exorcisms. Inner court magic is magic that is based in deeper layers of reality, or higher layers of reality. It depends on how you experience them. I experience them as being deeper or more inner, hence why I like the term inner court magic. Inner court magic frequently has no corresponding location in physical reality, although there are some specific exceptions. In other words, you, usually as your astral body, leave physical reality and go to another realm or layer of reality entirely. In my experience, you can leave physical reality a few different ways. Ritual work, where you go through a gate to another realm or layer of reality. There are portals that open up periodically in certain locations and times. It is possible to attune yourself to listen or feel for these portals and just go through one of them when it opens up. In altered states of consciousness, like meditation, you can just sink through physical reality into deeper layers of reality. And then here are some examples of some kinds of inner court magic that you might do when not in physical reality. Visiting the inner desert. This is a particular layer of causal reality that can be used as a hub for a lot of the other layers and realms of reality. Time travel. You can view different times while staying in physical reality, but in my experience, you have to at least temporarily move through a non-physical dimension in order to visit other times. Visiting the inner library or downloading from the Akashic records to gain information. Guiding a soul through the death process, the journey after they've died and departed from physical reality. Visiting inner temples at the edge of the abyss in the inner desert, either just for sightseeing or to gain information. Crossing the abyss to the region of polarized divinity. This is a region of pure yin-yang energy. It's very powerful and intense, and I don't recommend going there without proper preparation. Visiting the realms of angelic or demonic beings. Another thing I don't recommend doing without proper prior training. Visiting the void. This is perfectly fine for some reason. There are some practices that are sort of hybrid, like, for example, manifestation work. When people do manifestation practices, they're usually located in physical reality while doing them, so in that sense, it is outer court magic. But technically, when you're doing manifestation effectively, you are accessing causal layers of reality, even if you're not aware of it. It is also absolutely possible to do manifestation work directly from causal layers of reality, in which case this would clearly be inner court magic. Although I don't think it's a good idea to do this unless some form of trusted inner guidance is telling you to do it and you're following its instructions very carefully. Working with demonic or angelic beings. These beings are native to their own manifested layers of reality, which we typically access through the inner desert, which is a layer of causal reality. However, they can leave their native manifested realities just like we can. So we can end up interacting with them in causal realms or layers, in their native manifested layers of reality, or in our own manifested layer of reality. When interacting with them in our manifested reality, you could call that outer court magic. For example, if you summon an angelic or demonic being to work with you in a ritual. But honestly, I would still probably call any interaction with demonic or angelic beings inner court magic, even if it's happening in manifested reality, simply because it can be draining or even dangerous to a degree that is far more typical of inner court magic. These beings have a different energy frequency or density than us, so simply interacting with them can be very hard on both the mind and the body. I would also include here the types of exorcisms where the being you are exorcising is actually a demonic being. In many cases, it's something much more minor, like a non-corporeal parasite, in which case I would probably call it outer court magic if you stay in physical reality. Working with causal energies in a ritual space in manifested reality. For example, you can have a four-directional ritual in which you're working directly with the magical elements, which are causal energies. The ritual is happening in manifested reality, but the power you're working with is causal power. Anyway, both outer court magic and inner court magic can be very useful. Outer court magic deals directly with things happening in manifested reality. Yes, manifested reality is probably all an illusion, but it's still most likely our best school for consciousness progression, and outer court magic can be a key part of that. Inner court magic deals with the layers of reality and phenomena that are more real. Because of this, it is much more powerful and has greater effect. This is the kind of magic that you need access to in order to be of more direct service to capital C consciousness. And as we just discussed, you can use them both together too. In terms of the states and stages of spiritual development, outer court magic falls under the category of subtle state phenomena. I sometimes also make a distinction between early subtle or low subtle, by which I mean normal mental and emotional processes, versus late subtle or high subtle, by which I mean outer court magic. And then inner court magic is causal state and beyond. I strongly believe that a magical adept needs both. The capacity to do inner court magic is a key part of what makes someone a magical adept. And then I believe that continuing to do outer court magic is important for grounding and staying balanced as a human. If you get too unbalanced, then you become unhealthy as a human, and then you're not a very useful adept. I believe that this is why both outer court magic and inner court magic appear to be core to the Turquoise stage education system that I've been seeing in my visions. I intend to make more videos about that education system soon. Stay tuned.